Good afternoon, everyone. Live from the Masters. It's not Tiger Woods. It's BlaineBartlett.com/podcast. I was just on the 100th episode of my mentor, Blaine Bartlett's podcast. And better than Tiger Woods, we have our friend, an incredible author, speaking of a topic that I love to discuss, which is negotiation and understanding not only the mindset, the heart set, but the feeling and energy of how value is articulated in the negotiation, something that I have studied for many, many years and can't wait to talk to Barry-nalebuff. He is at the Milton Steinbach Professor there at Yale School of Management. If you don't know Yale, it's the Tulane of the North. That's the way I like to call it. What do you think, Blaine?
It's and you can get away with that.
I can try. Anyway, Barry, welcome to Office Hours. Obviously, I'm a little bit excited being here at the Masters for the 25th year because I brought my 12-year-old and my wife for the very first time. So wow. We are having an extraordinary time. But you wrote a book that is amazing, Split the Pie. And what a great title, because I think a lot of times the simplicity in negotiation of fairness, of, hey, split the difference, split the pie, could probably resolve a lot of negotiations without ego. And so I'm going to start with the lessons that you've learned about how people get into the way of their own resolve in a true negotiation.
Sure. I teach at Yale. The
Tulane of the North.
Tulane of the North. Also, New Haven, known for its pizzas.
Yep.
And my students are wonderful. They are smart. They're empathetic until they negotiate. And then some weird disorder takes over, and they start acting like jerks. Wow. And they make lowball offers to the other. They make threats, ultimatums. And I think the reason why that's the case is they don't have a framework, a principle for how to go about negotiating. There was a wise man in a book called Game Time Decision Making who says you talk about having a set of principles and standards that you want to apply to get yourself ready to go into any situation, and they don't have it. They don't know what it is they're supposed to be doing. And the confusing thing is they don't even know what they're negotiating over. And so if you don't have that level of preparation and understanding, no wonder you're going to go out there and try and copy some cartoonish characterization of what a negotiation is really about.
You know, the art of the deal.
That would be, yes.
The wrong book to read. The wrong book to read.
Only if you want to know what not to do. If you'd like,
exactly.
Then it's fine.
Yeah, essentially, what I hear you speaking into is something that Adam Smith basically predicated what we call capitalism on, which was the invisible hands of commerce.
Mm-hmm.
Mutually beneficial transactions.
Yeah.
And how does that fit into, because I mean, if you go back to what Smith wrote about in The Wealth of Nations, you basically have a treatise for how to conduct an effective negotiation.
Yeah. So let me push you a little farther on that, because sometimes people ask me, well, Barry, that's all fine and dandy, except what if the negotiation is zero sum? What if the more I get, the less you get? What then?
Mm-hmm.
And I think even that is a misnomer, a mistake, because one thing that's possible in negotiation is we don't reach a deal, in which case we both get zero.
Yep.
And therefore, reaching a deal is a positive outcome. It creates pie for both of us.
Mm-hmm.
And why do we not reach deals? Because one side feels they're being treated unfairly. And we know from a huge amount of experimental evidence that people will turn down positive amounts of money to spite the other side because they just feel they're not being treated fairly. And so nobody turns down a deal if what they've been offered is fair. But a lot of people throw around the F word, the fair word, without having a sense of what it means, and they'll mislabel something as fair, which is actually in their interest. So can we actually come up with something that's fair? And if we can agree to split the pie, then we can spend all of our efforts on working to make the pie bigger.
And I think you use an interesting word, to work to make the pie bigger. We Blaine and I wrote a book called Compassionate Capitalism, which was the precursor to game time decision making, because it required a skill set that my mother really enforced in me, which was to be more interested than interesting. And a very common overlooked strategy in negotiation is interest. And if I'm more interested in providing value and not having a zero sum game, but yet be interested in how can this be a value add game for both of us. And compassionate capitalism requires not only to make money, but to help people with the money that's made and the business that's created. The coordinated collaborative movement, as Blaine likes to say, how can we reframe or re-engineer the strategies or the perspective away from the art of the deal, away from the zero sum overselling, back end selling, line manipulating, and cheating that goes on in negotiation that ends up in a less than zero sum game, to understand, hey, look, if we actually work together, coordinate together, collaborate together to figure out the value add, this is something that becomes mutually beneficial, and a negotiation becomes not only fair, but fun.
So I'm 100% with you. I think at one point earlier in your life, you talked about your ambition of not being the most interesting man in the world, but the most interested man in the world. I can't remember who that the tequila guy was.
Exactly. It's the Dos Equis, right? Isn't that
the Dos
even
Equis,
most
sorry.
interesting? Yeah, the most interesting man in the world.
And so I'm all about that notion of what I'll call being allocentric rather than egocentric, being focused on the other side. And that is how you go about creating pie. But here's the thing. If the whole time you're working to create pie, you haven't figured out how you're going to divide it up, then you have to watch your back. And you're going to feel like you're in a Miranda rights situation. Everything you say can and will be used against you. And therefore, you're not going to open up because, not only do you have to learn about the other side, you also have to help the other side learn about you.
I was in a negotiation years ago with a business partner in Japan. And this, literally goes back 20 plus odd years. And we were just at loggerheads. And we'd been, we knew each other personally, but we weren't getting traction on this thing. And I wish I had had this idea. He's actually the one that suggested it. I was sitting on the opposite side of his desk, and he was, in his normal place. He said, "Blaine, son, let's trade places." I went, "What do you mean?" I said, "Let's physically, you sit in my chair, I'll sit in your chair." And we both knew each other's companies well enough to be able to do what he asked next was, "Let me take your position and argue vociferously for it. You take my position and do the same. And let's see what happens."
Yeah.
It was miraculous.
It's one of the great tools we talk about in Split the Pie, which is we can't always win a negotiation, but we can always be understood.
Yep.
And a lot of times, the reason people keep arguing in negotiations is they think they're not succeeding because the other side doesn't understand their position. So how do I persuade the other side I understand them? If I make their argument, and by the way, and then check that I was right, because I shouldn't presume that I know their argument, then I have helped them understand that they may not be getting their way, but it's not because I don't understand them. It's because there's something else that's going on.
Exactly.
And Professor, I would love someday to come there and speak to the kids. And I'd like to give one of the shortest speeches, the shortest lessons of negotiation about what we do before we go into negotiation. And I think a lot can be resolved. One of the biggest, for me, lessons that I've learned in negotiation, and I have become, a great beneficial negotiator, is simply asking one question: what is my perceived value in this negotiation, and what is my bottom line? I have found that you talked about the lost ignorance that goes into most naive negotiators, where it's all ego based and they think that it's all strategy and bullying out of arrogant ignorance. But when you become radically humble and solely go into a negotiation saying, this is my bottom line, but this is the perceived value, and I'll take anything in between. We get done with negotiating very quickly and very satisfactorily every time, because if someone goes below my bottom line, I'll just say, look, that's just non-negotiable, and move forward. How does that truly apply in your perspective with all the great books you've written and the students that you're helping? Would that be of service to them?
So I'm going to push back a little bit on that,
Good.
if I may. Absolutely, you shouldn't take something worse than your bottom line, your BATNA, your best alternative. I got that. But I wouldn't say what value do I bring. It's what value do we create together? Okay, so because there's no I in terms of you can't create value by yourself.
And it's not a pushback, it's a clarification. Great, well put, yes.
Secondly, if that value is some amount, I'm not prepared to take anything better than my fallback. I'm prepared to split that value with you. And the answer is I'm prepared to treat you fairly, but I'm also going to insist that you treat me fairly. And essentially, I'm not going to make any demands on you on things that I wouldn't say for myself. And essentially, that notion of switching positions in terms of what tables, I'm essentially acting a lot like a mediator. And what I'm trying to help people understand, what's this value creating that neither of us can do on our own. So let me see if I can give you an example using my mother, because I know you talk about your mom a lot. So see if I can bring mine.
Just don't make me cry. I instantly start crying, so that's fine.
My mother lives in Sarasota, and Sarasota has become a hot real estate market. And she was renting. And the person she was renting from says, I'm putting this house up on the market. And I'm going to ask $800,000, but because you've been a good tenant, I'd sell to you for $790,000. So now my question to both of you, flipping the tables here maybe, is what is the pie? What is this negotiation really about?
Place to live.
Place to live?
Place to live.
Sure. So,
Well, for your mother, it's a place to live. For
she wants to live there. She likes it. Absolutely.
and then for the owner, it's taking advantage of a hot market.
Hot market.
Selling high.
My view is that this negotiation is not so much about the price of the house, because there's a market price for that. It's about the ability to avoid a real estate commission. And that's 5% on $800,000 or $40,000. And so I write back and say, look, I think that we should, we're prepared to pay you the market price for this house. And I'd like to take that real estate commission and split it 20-20. And he writes back and says, well, I think you don't understand. This is a hot market. And so that's why I should be getting more of the savings. To which I say, the fact that it's a hot market is why the price is high. But essentially, if you sell to anybody else, the 800 means you clear 760. And if my mother buys the equivalent house from anybody else, she's going to have to pay 800. And so effectively, that 40,000 only exists if the two of you reach an agreement together. You can't get it without her, she can't get it without you. Therefore, you should split it 20-20. Now, there's a couple other aspects of the pie. She doesn't have to pay moving costs and the psychic costs of moving. He doesn't have to fix up the house, put in new carpets and the like, so we call those a wash. And so then he agrees, okay, we'll split it 20-20. But what's the market price? And the good news is there were 5 other sales on that street in the last 6 months. So we adjust things based on size of square footage, and we're done. And we're both $20,000 ahead. And then, having decided, look, let's create big pies together and split them, we both hire the same lawyer and don't have to pay duplicate lawyer fees and saved another $2,000. So, again, people are confused. They think the negotiation is really about the price of the house. I want to turn negotiation into a data exercise, which is basically what's the market price. And really, we're negotiating over the 40, and that's something where I wouldn't take 5,000 of the 40. Because I see no reason why somebody else should get 35 and I should get 5 when we're equally responsible.
Completely changes the nature of the conversation.
Absolutely. And it makes it quick and easy and I think fair.
And I think that's exactly where we started, that so much time, I always say the greatest misuse of time exists between problems and solutions. And by splitting the pie, we resolve that issue ultimately, especially in negotiations. So many times we can identify, as you say, the data that exists, that stable data between the two of us, and split the difference, split the pie. everybody benefits.
So let me say that split the difference and split the pie are not the same thing.
Right. That's why I switched it. I get absolutely.
Okay.
Splitting the difference would have been after. So yes, splitting the pie, and that's why one needs to read this new book, as well as your other books as well. It's a radical new way to negotiate, a simpler way, and a more fair way as well. I look forward to learning more and having more conversations with you, Barry-nalebuff, an incredible scholar, professor, and author, and just a joy to have here on Office Hours. We're blessed to have you, and we will come visit you in New Haven, so be careful.
Okay, and maybe one day I can teach you Tulane. You know, it could all work out.
No problem. Come on down. You can take my place.
Thank you.
Waiting for a Mystic Pizza here.
That's right. Thank you, Barry. I love that conversation. More people need to go back and watch that. And just so you know, he himself has done some very large negotiating, and his company, Honest Tea, was purchased by Coca-Cola, which I'm sure was filled with scarce lawyers and scarce executives. So I'd love to, on our next conversation, talk about how we deal with the scarce side of things when someone doesn't have an open mind, how we re-engineer that too, because you have to have an open mind and an abundant mind in order to split the pie. Yes. All right, we'll bring on Tim. He's been waiting patiently.
There he is.
Join 1440.com. 1440, most people will know the significance of that because I deal with it every day in the man-made construct of time, the pragmatic world that I lived in. He's the CEO and co-founder of 1440 Media. Tim, and I'm going to say this correctly, Huelskamp. Hopefully we nailed it. I'm on a roll with my name improvement. Welcome to Office Hours, and we are just very excited to talk about your 1440 Media and how exactly this is changing our own perspective in culture and in content.
Yeah, David, Blaine, wonderful to see you again. Thank you so much for having me. Honored to be here.
Good
David, I thought you'd be wearing the tiger, the shirt he was wearing today.
Fuchsia. They sold out of all the fuchsia shirts the minute that guy got on the news. I went with the Travis Matthews standard light blue, and I'll wear the red shirt on Sunday when he's in the hunt. We'll see what happens. I'll tell you this though, the man's limping, so I don't know how he's going to make it to Sunday. He's amazing, but he looks a lot older than he used to.
At least he's in the game.
He's doing well, actually. 1 under and right in the hunt as usual. But let's talk about culture and content because it's ever changing. And, you know, starting into the 1440 realm, you know, how has it changed and how are you dealing with the change of the culture and the content in the media world?
Yeah, it's a great question. Ever changing. Let me tell you a little bit about why we started 1440 because I think that'll help answer the question. So we're actually, most of the team is not journalists. So I used to be a venture capitalist. Our editor-in-chief is actually a PhD scientist. And the problem we felt with our entrepreneur hats on was we felt the media wasn't delivering in two ways. One, we were busy professionals at the time and we wanted to know everything going on in the world across, you know, sports, entertainment, and culture. So Tiger, what shirt Tiger's wearing and what CRISPR is and why that matters to society. And what crypto is and like the big deals of the day. Warren Buffett just bought 11% of HP, as we'll cover tomorrow, right? So we felt like we wanted to know all these different things to be well-rounded individuals, but to do that work, you had to go to 15 or 20 different websites or newsletters or news sources. And it was just too much work as a busy professional. So that was one. And then two, we felt like there were there's these wonderful media organizations, which we respect tremendously, but they often like tell you who to vote for or how you should think about something or opine too much, use a lot of adjectives. And at the time we said, you know, we're pretty smart folks trying to move up in our careers. We just want to come to our own conclusions and not be told how to think. So we started 1440 about 4 years ago with that mission and actually started with 78 friends and family. And now a couple of years later here, we're at 1.5 million subscribers. So that read our daily newsletter. And one of the interesting things that we found, going back to your culture and content piece, is so our audience is actually about a third independent, a third Republican, and a third Democrat. So because we try to deliver the news like just the facts and no motives, and it's hard, and obviously there's bias in our selection, and there's bias in any in any human activity. But yeah, we just try to be as unbiased as humanly possible and just deliver a nice roundup of what's going on in the world today.
So, for the listeners, I mean, just to, the consumable is actually a newsletter. It's a 5-minute read. I mean, it's very digestible, and it is incredibly informative. How do you curate? I mean, and this is just I guess kind of a geek question, because I'm really interested in it. How do you actually curate this? Because every time I've read it, it's kind of like, I can't find this anywhere else easily. It's
Yeah, no, appreciate that. Yeah, so believe it or not, in this ever-growing world of technology, we use humans to do that process. So we have some tools that help us with it. But yeah, we have different experts in different fields that cover the different sections. So as I mentioned, our editor-in-chief's a scientist that worked on Capitol Hill, and he covers our science section. I used to be a venture capitalist and spent about 15 years in the business world, and I'm consuming business news for 3 to 4 hours a day anyway. So I do our business section. So it's a combination. We're just reading information all day long and trying to do that. We're doing that hard work for ourselves, and it takes a lot of time, and we're scouring the internet. And then we're basically just like trying to present something to our friends. It's like, hey, we did all the hard work for you. Here's all the information. And then again, we're going to try to present it to you as unbiased as possible. So that's what we hear from our readers more and more. That's becoming like a real value prop, right? You turn on the cable news and 2 people are yelling at each other. And then it's like you're living in, if you watch 2 different news networks some nights, it's like you're living in an alternate universe, right?
Oh, yeah. So, every night. I watch them both. I watch both sides, and it's every night. It seems like I live in 2 worlds when I, listen. And I won't listen just to one, because I want to see both worlds and figure out where I'm at. There's 2 aspects, Tim, about what you do that to me blow my mind, and I think they should be the 2 biggest takeaways from having you on. One is community building, and the importance. 1440 means a day. It's how many minutes exist in a day. For those people who have never been exposed to 1440 before, which is something I live by, and I'm a daily person. I believe, in the importance of daily because of the aggregate effect, and that's how we build a true community today, because there's such a large size, scope, and scale of an audience. If you're not doing something daily, you won't attract a community and aggregate it like you have. But even more important than building a community, which is the number 1 takeaway, because you guys do such a great job of that with subscribers of all types of people, like you said. But the more remarkable thing is the biggest interference to doing something daily is the open rate. That it's very difficult to do something every day and continue to have an extraordinary open rate. And if I'm not mistaken, tell me if I get bad data, but you have an over 50% open rate on a daily newsletter. And so I was hoping you could help share, number 1, how you strategize for this extraordinary community building that aggregates and compounds. But even more importantly, when you build a community that big, how do you get them to open it every day?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. Yeah, I think at the end of the day, we really just focus on building value to the consumer, right? So when we started this, it's actually amazing. Our open rate is held at about that number when we were 78 all the way up to 1.5 million. So there's a little bit of fluctuation, but it's we like to think that the open rate in our industry is the metric that shows like the quality, like the value you add to people's lives. So even when we were only 80 and 10,000, it was the same number, and it's just continued to grow. And yeah, I just think at the end of the day, like we're trying really, really hard to deliver for the consumer. So as another example, they email us pretty often. Some of them aren't too nice, but 95% of them are very thoughtful and like they're trying to help us. They're providing information for us as well. But we answer every email because I tell this other fellow startup people this, like, reader feedback is like the gift of all gifts, right? If you have people that are taking your product in and love it and are trying to tell you how to improve it, and you're not listening to them. One of my things I really, really don't like, and I get why larger companies do it, is when you reply to an email and it says like, this email will not take a reply. Like, come on, right? So we just, at the end of the day, we think our rate's so high because we curate a lot of the information, which helps folks. We do the impartial, unbiased, just the facts approach, which is becoming a larger market as these news companies become more and more polarized. And then, we just try to deliver value to the reader. Like, we built this for ourselves, right? We were mid-30s professionals that just want to know what's going on really quickly. again, in an unbiased way. And we try to remember that every day, that we're like, there's someone on the other side, right? There's a lawyer, there's a teacher, there's a busy mom who wants to be informed before she has to go do her work. So yeah, we're just trying to deliver for the consumer at the end of the day.
Wow.
Now, that kind of touch, and it is a touch. And this kind of goes to your question, David, about the community building piece of it. You don't build a community unless people feel like they're included in the community. So part of the open rate, in 50% is just crazy, particularly sustained in the way that you've done it here. How do you go about facilitating that high touch inclusion piece outside of answering email inquiries and that sort of thing? Is there something unique about your approach?
Yeah, it's a great question. Blaine, I think it really just comes down to trust, right? So the readers have so many options to read news and information and what's going on in the day. So if we lose their trust, they're gone, right? And like that's really how our business model works. So even when we do advertisements for that's how it's monetized. And every product that we represent, we use personally as well, right? Because we know that that's a very important, again, you give this reader trust, and we don't want to break that even with the products we're advertising as well. So we sleep on Casper mattresses and right. So we actually use the product, but yeah. So I think at the end of the day, it's just the reader has to know that they can trust you. So we spend an inordinate amount of time making sure that we're delivering on our value prop, which again is helping them save time and doing it without without all the motives and the BS and the bias.
So you're kind of the Walter Cronkite of this space.
Yeah, it's funny, as we've gotten bigger, we've seen a lot. That name comes up. Obviously, we know who he is, but to be frank, at first I didn't know who he was.
Oh, no, don't say it. They just lie to us, Tim.
Yeah. But no, we see that all the time. Actually, a lot of our in the spirit of our Facebook ads, or when we acquire new customers, they take what your customers tell you and spit it back at them. Yeah, we actually use that in a lot of ads, because a lot of our readers, we probably see that 3 or 4 times a week now. It's like, oh my gosh, it's just incredibly impassioned. Finally, I've been looking for this news source for years. It's how news used to be. It's Walter Cronkite. Thank you for just letting me come to my own conclusions and make my own choices.
Yep.
Yeah. And Tim Huelskamp, thank you so much, CEO, co-founder of 1440 Media. Join 1440.com is the easiest way to join the millions that do every day and to get the news delivered to you so you can form your own opinion, which is a really fresh thought. For those people who know who Walter Cronkite is, Google him.
Thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Hey, it's been a pleasure to have you here.
Keep up the great work, man. I love the newsletter. Make sure I stay on that list.
All right. Likewise, sir. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Tim. Awesome. I knew he was going to say I didn't know who he was at first. I'm like, oh, no, he said it. We feel so old. Anyway, that's why I have Blaine on here, because he's 3 years older than I am. And it's hard to find someone older than me. So thanks for joining me, Blaine Bartlett.
Absolutely. I just look younger than you, so people get confused.
All right. We got Aaron Thompson now, the Chief Revenue Officer of Success Coaching. I will tell you, as much coaching as Blaine Bartlett and I do, I'm not sure I'd want to come on to a show with us two and talk about coaching, but he's a brave soul. He is a customer success management coach and the world's only educational accredited certification to that point. And everybody should have coaches. And I have one, and he's whatever way you're looking at the screen. And my screen is to my right. He may be to my left, but Blaine Bartlett has been my mentor. I have a sleep mentor and coach. Success coaching, customer success is a huge success. How did you get into the coaching space, Aaron?
That's a good question. Thanks, first off, for having me on here, guys. It's awesome to meet you both. And just before we get into business, David.
Do you know who Walter Cronkite is?
Yes. Yeah, I'm actually old enough to remember actually seeing him on
good.
TV.
You can come on the show. Thank you.
That's the litmus here.
I fully recognize that you're joining us here. So there's the big cat from 2019 on 10T. There's me and my best friend, lucky enough to get there that year. It's always good to have friends who can see the future and be able to get us, boots on the ground for the last time we won a major. But I know that you're joining from Augusta, so thanks so much for having me on. I know there's got to be a ton of fun stuff happening around you. But
I
my
was there
story, yeah.
I was there in 2019 too, so I share that experience. It's beautiful.
Oh man, that was unbelievable. I don't think I've ever hugged anybody as hard as I hugged my friend Shane there when we finally reunited after the chaos on 18. It was just crazy. But so anyway, thank you so much, guys, for having me on. This is a delight. Yeah, how I got into this, a lot of times you don't expect every job you have to apply to what you ultimately find and love to do in the world. But lo and behold, that was the case for a sociology major who fell into that because I transferred schools trying to play basketball and they didn't even have psychology. And I didn't realize it until I was there on campus. Went down a tech track, ended up getting into training and instructional design. And then about 7 years ago, I found this customer success industry, and it's been profound, completely changed my life professionally and personally. This is a donkey. This is a unicorn, if you couldn't tell. And that's our logo. At Success Coaching, we believe everybody's a unicorn as long as we can get the right tools, and that's what we aim to do, is actually certify people in this new discipline of customer success management.
Well, yeah, let's unbundle that a little bit. Customer success management. How do you? What's the foundational? What's the word I'd use here? What's the philosophical grounding that you're using to make this thing fungible?
Absolutely. So people think account management 2.0 or customer service on steroids, and it's actually not. It's its own dedicated discipline and vertical that was born back in 2005. Originally at Salesforce, the first software as a service, massive successful company. And what they developed still rings true in the industry today. So we can define what anyone's definition of success is by their desired outcome plus their desired experience. Give me what I want and do it in a better, less friction-filled experience than your competition, and you will have delivered a higher volume of success. And so it comes down to the 3 Ds. We define what that is for the human, again, and it's not accounts and it's not logos, it's people, personal, professional, everything involved. And then we're going to deliver that every day, week, month, quarter. And then we're going to demonstrate that to them so that they don't have a shadow of a doubt when the end of the contract comes, why they should renew and then ultimately expand, advocate for us, and then generate what we call customer success qualified leads, or CSQLs. 1/13 the acquisition cost of typical top of funnel marketing and sales, higher conversion rates, faster deal times, everybody wins. And so what it is at its core is really a predictive, proactive customer relationship, as opposed to the reactive and tactical that we have in the support world. If I sell you a physical product and it works, I don't need to talk to you again because you had to put up a bunch of money to acquire it, you own it in perpetuity, etc. So as long as the phone doesn't ring, I don't have to worry about it. Customer success, I'm providing you that solution in terms of an outcome as a service. Now, you don't own it now. Think of like watching a movie at home. When that was our desired outcome, we had to get our hands on a physical DVD. And if you're old enough to, like myself, right, Betamax, VHS, Laserdisc, whatever the case, right, you had to have a physical product, but you didn't really ever care about the product. You cared about what it did, not what it was. And that's where, as a service in the subscription economy continues to grow, because it's easier to acquire customers, but the acquisition cost up top is about the same. And so if we do effective customer success management, we create advocates out of our customers, and we get people talking positively about us out there in the industry. That then drives that much less expensive lead. And again, it's a shorter deal time and everybody wins. So that's kind of at its core, it's a predictive, proactive, strategic way of managing a relationship instead of reactive and tactical like we've had in customer support forever.
It's so smart, and it's, within the context of, I teach a 5 to Thrive of, through that context of what you teach, stimulate interest, transition interest, share a vision, manage it and develop that vision is where the customer success coaching comes in. And those customers will thrive, meaning those customers are the most statistically successful and inexpensive way of getting more customers. But there's been one nuance that I'd love to get your perspective on, and it's, even beyond managing and developing the customer as that solution, but more importantly, even taking it to the next level of having a relationship to ask for help from your customers.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, this is to me where I've been able to build my own personal brand and, you know, understanding the energy of receiving and providing value, providing it well, and providing it to many, but then taking it to the last level of feeling comfortable within the success management or success coaching to ask for help from them, to say, hey, do you know anyone that can help me? Trying to categorize everyone I do business with as a sponsor of mine, meaning at least they know someone else that would help me, or a power sponsor. They themselves will help me and they know someone. What are some of the techniques that you've learned through the aggregation of experience to create success coaching that allows us to feel comfortable asking, because that really puts some fuel power behind the success of thriving, or of what the ultimate outcome is of owning these customers and empowering them with a relationship?
Yeah, you know, it's a good question. And if the ultimate goal here is to really create advocates, right? And how we do that is making people's lives better by having us in them. And it can transcend your B2B value proposition and ROI discussions. I literally talk to our executive stakeholders and buyers, and when they're still up here evaluating us against our competition, I'm asking them, how do you get promoted? How do I make you look good? What do you want to do in terms of thought leadership or industry knowledge? And is that your forte? Do you want to be on a stage talking in front of other people or not? And I really start to paint that picture of not only just what they want to accomplish in terms of desired outcomes, but then we talk about how you want to accomplish that so that I can fit into your work style and what works for you. I wrote an article about a month ago called QBRs Are Stupid. All these companies are doing these quarterly business reviews, and they're dragging these poor executive stakeholders into this, you know, quarterly presentation every 3 months. And not surprisingly, it's very difficult to get them to continue to attend those meetings because they've sat through so many lousy ones. What we're doing there is trying to demonstrate what we've been providing in terms of value, but we actually add friction by dragging them into our predefined business process. So, long answer to a shorter question, I suppose. How we can generate these advocates is having that conversation early. There's even a concept of an advocate pipeline, and setting those expectations early in the relationship that this is a give and take, and I want to make you successful in whatever way I can and help you get there in whatever way I can. And in return, I'm going to ask for more than just capital from your company. Doesn't have to be a big Herculean case study that takes everybody's, you know, entire weekend away, and maybe people read it, maybe they don't, but some form of customer advocacy so that we can start generating those leads. That's where that exponential growth concept can really start to take hold. And, you know, people might say they got a funny looking logo, but, you know, their content makes sense. And then the person they talk to, we didn't have to market to them, and they found out about us, and hopefully we can provide a solution for what they need.
You know, the whole idea, I'm going to echo what you just said here in part, the QBR phenomena, if you will. I mean, I understand the value of an after-action review and all of that sort of thing. But the problem I have, and this is the one that I'm hearing you actually address, is anytime there's a QBR or its ilk in place, what we're doing is we're living in the past. And the past is never alive. Mm-hmm. What I hear you speaking to is, how do we bring aliveness to the process? You know, customer success. How do you feel uplifted, and are you positioned to thrive as a consequence of your interaction with us? Let's keep the focus where energy will follow attention. So what's the attention need to be on? Yeah, we want to do some fine tuning, but let's not belabor the point. Let's not live in the past. Hook us up to the future. And the why and the how, or not the how, I'm sorry, the why and the what, you're kind of taking off the table. And David and I both are running into this all the time. You know, entrepreneurs that we work with, business leaders we work with. How do I do this? How do I move? Yeah. And that's a slippery slope if you're not careful about how you execute on answering that question. So all of this, by way of saying, it sounds as if, and you're accredited in this methodology, it sounds as if you've got a way to actually effectively answer the how without getting it to the point where it becomes a blockage.
Exactly. Yeah. And what we unfortunately see a lot of times in these QBRs is that executive stakeholder is still upset about something, that they had a bad experience or had a bug or something, and they want to railroad it down into this tactical discussion.
Mhm.
And that's no longer a strategic business review. That's really what they should be. 50% retro, 50% prospective, because I got to show you what we did in terms of accomplishments for outcomes. But most importantly, I'm there to find out where you're going next. 100% strategic, the conversation. And that's the other thing. We need to make them a conversation. These poor account managers walk in with this 75-page slide deck, and it just bores the executive stakeholder to no end, rightfully so. I mean, nobody wants to sit around, and God forbid it starts with your company's founding story. I've seen some QBRs like that, right, where the poor AM gets in front and we were founded on this date in this city, as though the customer gives a damn. They don't, spoiler alert. And so that just starts it off already, creating friction in there, when all we're really there to do is find out strategically, what have we done, what are we doing, and how can we better align, and again, make your life better because we're in it. And then that's over time what leads to renewal, expansion, advocacy, and all those additional revenue drivers.
Yeah. What are you doing today? What do you like about it? What don't you like about it? And how can I be of service or value to you? And do you know anyone that can help me if I can perform on that as well? Aaron Thompson, thank you so much, giving us a great understanding of success coaching, the Chief Revenue Officer at Success Coaching, successcoaching.co. Make sure you reach out. If you want to exponentially grow your business, then learn Success Coaching. It is the easiest, fastest, efficient, and effective way to be statistically successful in business. The greatest companies on earth utilize this, may sometimes be unknowingly, but absolutely utilize this effectively. Thanks for joining us, Aaron. We appreciate you.
Thank you. Pleasure. Thanks so much.
Come visit me next year at the Masters, by the way.
Dude, I hope so. Yeah, well, I'll meet you on 10T. How about
10T, there we go. Tiger will be waiting for us in a fuchsia shirt. Awesome.
Perfect. Yeah. Take
Thank
care.
you.
Thanks again.
All right. We got a quick question, Blaine, before we get a takeaway to the day. David Finkelstein is here. He's the founder and CEO of BDEX, BDEX.com. And it is the world's first ever data exchange platform. So, David, I thought maybe you could define a data, how do I say that again? Data exchange platform. And then hopefully have a question for at least my friend Blaine, because he's fairly intelligent.
Yeah, certainly. So great to be here, David. Great to meet you both, Blaine as well. And yeah, so data exchange platform, we built a platform that's designed to help data companies and media companies and brands get access to data about consumers in a sort of real-time environment. And really the crux of it is we want to help brands, we want to help agencies that represent those brands and media companies understand consumers better so that they can reach the right people at the right time. And that's really what it's all about.
Beautiful. And you have a question for Blaine and I?
Where do I start? How much time do I get?
You got 5 minutes. Keep it short.
Look,
as much time as you need the next 5 minutes here.
Tell us everything you want to know.
Hey, I'm a serial entrepreneur. This is my third venture. But what I'm always looking to do is to grow and scale the business, right? So, ultimately, it comes down to, not just understanding what you're doing at the business level, right, at an executive level, and hiring the right people, putting the right people in the right seats, and like you were just talking about, understanding, how to look both backwards and forwards into what you're doing in the company. But I guess for me, I'm always looking to learn from the best minds. What kind of pieces of advice that you can give to any entrepreneur. Forget me, there's plenty of us out there listening as well, about scaling a business. This is my third time doing it, but I think that there's always something new to learn about, sort of the ins and outs of. It's one thing to provide a solution to your core customers, but how do you make sure you're scaling that business and, keeping true to your business model, to your team, and to your customers in the process, because things get really, really messy when you start scaling it. Adding more team members quickly can get really difficult. And so I think that that's always been one of the challenges that I've seen.
Yeah, and I love the fact that you start with the team, because in this technological world, people don't start with the team when they talk with scaling. For each individual, even if you are a technology-centric business, there's still an individual that's managing that technology. And so I believe all businesses scale, and I provide this document and exercise to everyone. So make sure I know they're spinning off my email down below. I'll be happy to send you this exercise. It's my scaling a business sheet, which is making it very simple. One, everything has a learning curve, and too many people try to create profit before they learn. And so each individual employee, software item that I try to estimate how long will it take for me to break even on this. And that's called the learning stage. So if I have an employee, I let them shadow me until I see that they have the skills, knowledge, and desire to break even on whatever it is, their investment I make in them. It's an investment phase. It's a learning stage. Then you have the execution stage, where you can put whatever number you want on that to execute at a multiple of what that investment in the people are, the software is, the platform is, whatever it may be. And then there's an equity stage where they can give back by someone else shadowing them. So the basis of scaling is this: can someone just watch and learn? Can they work with the person or the software and then be supervised? And then the supervision drops off and someone else replace. Now you have two people being shadowed, working with, supervised, then you have four. And if we start with the people with learning, execution, and equity stages, putting a time and amount to each of those things, you'll find exponentially acceleration within the business. You'll be able to be prepared for the size, scope, and scale of the audience, which we've never seen before. And still, most companies and people don't understand the size, scope, and scale of 7.6 billion people reachable today, compared to 76,000 in your local county, which was enough to build a business to retire on by the time you were 65. This is why most people have interference and lack of vision and lack of hope, because they don't keep things simple by learning, executing, and equity. So that's my advice. I'll be happy, David, to send you that document. Blaine, real quick, what do you have to add?
Yeah, I will typically advise one thing in particular here. Start with the question, for the sake of what do you want to scale to begin with? I mean, the obvious answer is, we've got opportunity here. But more than that, for the sake of what? Because that for the sake of what becomes the foundation that you can actually leverage as you start to grow. When you start feeling as if things are getting tenuous or they're losing connection with that for the sake of what, that's the litmus that signals slow down. So we're getting in, ahead of the curve here. We're about ready to have the wave, come on top of us. So getting yourself, getting the organization, getting your key team members really clear on, for the sake of what are we wanting to scale this. And then consummate with that would be, and at what rate will that need to happen to allow us to thrive effectively?
Yeah, that's a great response, because it actually goes in line with a memo that I keep on, literally on a fake Post-it on my desktop every day, that says "Ask why." It's always asking why. Well, why do you want to do something that way, or why do you want to do it? So
the question of for the sake of what, I just put up an article in the Soul of Business newsletter that I put on LinkedIn. The question, for the sake of what, if it's asked well, and if you're willing to live with it uncomfortably long, it begins to tap into what I call the soul of the business. I mean, it really it taps into that place, that aliveness is actually emanating from. Now that sounds esoteric as hell, but when you really can kind of capture that, it really is, you're cooking with gas in some very interesting ways at that point.
Awesome. Thank you, David. Thank you, Blaine. We appreciate you. Please reach out to us, David, and anyone else that would like to have more insight, either through the soul of business, how to scale that, or the scaling of a business exercise that is quite useful for all businesses, even on your third, fourth, or fifth startup. David, thank you for joining us, and we appreciate you being here. Have a great night.
Thanks, David.
Thank you. You too.
Incredible David Finkelstein, just finishing off an incredible group of guests here on Office Hours, the Masters Edition, my Thankful Thursday edition, and I'm so thankful to have Blaine Bartlett. Real quick, Blaine, as I want to see the end of the golf, what's your takeaway for the day?
Well, I love pie. I love pie. Pie is one of my favorite desserts. So being able to really pay attention to enlarging the pie. I mean, every one of our guests in some way, shape, or form touched on that. Obviously, Barry did very specifically. But when we looked at communicating, we got 1,440 minutes in the day. How do we actually, we can't expand that pie, but we can expand what's in there from a qualitative perspective. More quality in it, the better the pie is going to be. There's no question about that. And then, Aaron talking about, that whole customer migration, the success, paying attention to the customer's success, that can only expand the pie of what's available, for all parties that are involved in that relationship. So, and even with David's question, I think scaling is a question of pie building. So there's this theme that kind of runs through it. It's not bigger just to be bigger. It's bigger because there's thriving involved when you have you smell a pie, you see it on a windowsill. The classic view of a pie cooling on the window. Everybody wants a piece of it. That's what life can be when you're really paying attention to how the pie is built and how it's actually distributed.
I love that. You're making me hungry as we're getting almost 7 o'clock here on the East Coast, which I'm not used to. I know what I'm having for dessert, by the way. My takeaway for the day is quite simply all of our guests, that were here, Barry, Tim, Aaron, and of course, David, they are dealing with three things: delivering value, delivering it well, and delivering it to the many.
Yep.
And that pie is part of that as well. But I want everyone to think about what value they're delivering, how they're delivering it, for the sake of what they're delivering it for, and can they deliver it to the many to scale it. If you do that, I think there's a great takeaway with all of our guests today. My takeaway is how blessed I am. It's Thankful Thursday, and I'm so thankful to be partnered with my mentor, Blaine Bartlett, in multiple ways, multiple charities, business fronts. And you'll be catching a show with Blaine on the Mindset Mastermind on Apple TV coming up here later on the year. We're going to be developing that and a variety of other terrific things that he's doing. Check him out, blainebartlett.com/podcast. You can check the 100th episode with David Meltzer and many other of my mentors that Blaine has, and extraordinary guests. Thank you, Blaine, for joining me. Send my love to Oregon.
Absolutely. Go Ducks.
Go Ducks. See you later. Oh, they cut him off. I love you, Blaine. Yep, one more chance.
I'm just going to say, enjoy the par 3.
I will. Thank you. All right. From the Masters, Maddie Mendoza, the Masters, all M's. I'm here with Miles Meltzer, the 12-year-old unbelievable bucket list item to, one, go to the Masters for 25 years, but to be blessed to share it with my 12-year-old and my wife. What a Masters it's been already. Unbelievable. It even beats the time when I was sitting on the 16th hole and watching Tiger sink the Nike commercial ball to then later win the Masters that year. Going with my 12-year-old and my wife. Wow, I am blessed. And I want to bless all of you. Bucket list, live your bucket list. Be more interested than interesting. Be kind to your future self. Do good deeds. Have a wonderful night. Go Tiger. Take care. Bye, Maddie.